Who's ready for a review of one of my easiest variegated plants, hands down, ever? Stick around with me and let's dive into the review of the Pellionia repens Variegated. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, today I've got a very cool plant, and as I said in the beginning of the video, by far my easiest variegated plant to grow, hands down, I'd say at this point. It's never given me any real problem. I'll bring it in so you can kind of see it up a bit closer, and you can kind of see how interesting and how variegated those leaves are. There's an awful lot of creamy white variegation that comes in, and then it dulls down to a slightly lighter kind of green versus a darker green. It is a bit of a trailing plant, but yeah, let's dive into some background on this plant. So I've owned this plant just coming up to a year now. So I've seen it grow through all the different seasons as well. I've seen it grow in autumn, in winter, in spring. This is now summer. And it's not a plant that I had ever heard of before. So it wasn't a plant that I necessarily was out there looking for. I knew that I grew a couple of Pellionias. I don't think it was a repens. I can't remember which one it was now. And I got it from one of the plant swaps in London a few years back now, and I knew that that plant was super easy to grow. It does have this beautiful trailing kind of cascading effect, which is really cool, especially for where I wanted it to be. Whether or not this would be happier if I gave it kind of like a wall to climb on, because I would imagine, based on how the leaves grow in that manner, and it kind of a bit flat and a bit kind of all out, I would imagine this is more of a shingler than a trailer necessarily, but grows super happily as a trailing plant as well. So yes, I never necessarily gone out of my way to get a Pellionia repens, but as I said, about a year ago, I was purchasing some other plants from Grow Tropicals, and they had this plant that was a variegated plant. I also, by the way, also have a discount. This is a brand new world for me where I've got discount codes for these things. So if you want to use my discount code for up to 10% off, up until October, I think, I'll add it at the top there and in the description. Just to be clear, I don't get any kickback on this. You just get a benefit of a discount. But yes, so with this plant, I'd never heard of it before. I had of the Pellionia repens. I didn't know that there was necessarily a variegated form of this. And it reminded me the other day of this plant as well, because I think I was on Instagram and I was scrolling and I saw Emma from Good Growing, and she did a bit of a story update on this going, let's water a plant together, or tap to water a plant, when this plant was like really looking floppy and kind of like miserable, giving real kind of spathiphyllum or peace lily vibes, and it's just like, I am so parched, you are a very bad plant parent, why have you not watered me? And then she obviously watered the plant and it was like perked up and like nothing had ever happened. Love a good expressive plant, and that is an expressive plant for this. So yes, it is one that I kind of saw and added into my basket, and as I say, the rest is history. So let's come into speed of growth for this one. And I will say, for such a variegated plant, this is fast. So again, I'll do the usual benchmarks that I do on these types of videos. So if a golden pothos in my space, so in here in the conservatory, in the growing season, so spring and summer, might get 1 to 2 or 2 or 3 leaves on each growing stem in the growing season, this will pretty much do the same, if not maybe a bit more, because usually with this you'll get one new leaf coming in, and I'll show you kind of like, that's where it's a very bushy plant, so it's difficult to kind of like pick out things. So there is one new leaf there, and it comes out one at a time, but it does create this kind of paired leaf effect. On each one of these stems, yeah, 2 to 3 new leaves each month easily, possibly a bit more. Now, the one thing I will say, in the winter, it didn't do very much growing at all. It was kind of stagnant at that point. But even in the spring and autumn, it did bring out 1 to 2 leaves a month on the stem, so it's done really, really well. You might see that some of the older stems have got some leaves on there, some of the other ones might have dropped some leaves at the bottom there, but this always looks bushy. It grows in a very organic way in my space, so that's absolutely fine. But yeah, generally speaking, this is a fast plant, especially for a variegated plant. I mean, come on. This is insane, and especially like when you look at some of the levels of variegation, I'll bring it in so you can kind of see it again. Look at the levels of variegation on some of these leaves. There is very little chlorophyll on some of these leaves, and they are still growing super, super fast. So I'm just gobsmacked at the speed of this for a variegated plant. Am I sounding like a broken record? Because I am shocked by this. This is very, very, very cool. So yes, super, super fast houseplant, especially if you want something a bit more on the variegated side. I think I may have used the example of this, or somebody on a video previously had made a comment. It almost looks a bit like a variegated mint plant. So I can see that, and I don't disagree with that. And I think some people might be like, oh, I'm not sure. This is one of those things that everybody that I know that's owned it generally so far has said, this surprised me on how much I've enjoyed growing it, and I didn't expect it to. Is it a bit of a chaotic plant and it can grow in kind of all different weird and wonderful ways? Yes. Is this one that would really appreciate either something like a hanging basket, or even putting it onto something like a corkboard or a moss pole? Also yes, but not necessary, because I know a lot of people don't like this. Look, it grows quite happily as a trailing plant, and please note, the leaves do not get smaller. So that is a really big positive, I think, in my book. So yes, super fast grower. Now, ease of propagation with this, super easy, super, super easy. All you would do with a Pellionia, and this would apply for this one as well, is you would take a cutting, say there, and you would remove the bottom third of the leaves. If you want, you can add a tiny bit of rooting hormone, you don't have to, and then just pop it into either some damp sphagnum moss or some regular houseplant potting soil, maybe with a bit of more added perlite, and just let it grow and do its own thing. It will grow roots like mad. This might be one that I would suggest that you grow the same way that people do with a lot of the cuttings that they might take in a garden. So what you would do, if for instance you've got a square pot, and let me show you, if you've got a bit of a square pot, you would add a cutting in every single one of the corners, because you'd want a bushy plant. Because realistically, this isn't a plant that's going to branch out. This is a plant that one vine is going to vine down. So you don't necessarily want a plant that's just going to have the one vine coming through. You want it to be a bit fuller, and also it gives it enough space. If you put each one of those 4 cuttings in the corners of that pot, it will kind of space them out a bit more, and they won't end up crowding themselves too much when it comes to the roots. Obviously, I'm hearing the people going, well, I don't have a square pot, I might have a round pot. Use your imagination and just give them a bit more space between them. Don't put them right next, don't put a cutting here and another cutting here, just give them a bit more space amongst themselves. Put them on the outside, maybe if you want, put one in the middle. I mean, you might see in this pot, I don't know whether or not that's going to come up, I can see it from the top, but all of the growth points are coming in from the central point, and by and large, it doesn't branch. Does it branch still? Yes, I do have some points where it has branched. Oh, interestingly, the bits that's branched are actually cut stems. So it will do the same thing that most plants will do when you kind of interrupt the apical dominance, which is that growing tip. So if I was to cut it here, the place where you'll get the cuts happening, you might then get 2 branches coming out because it's activating nodes further down, and then it will branch out like you would do with most houseplants. So that is a top tip. If you want to grow this and you want to get it even bushier, I mean, some people are just greedy, and that's fine. You can do it that way by taking a few cuttings, you'll also encourage the mother plant to bush out even further. But yeah, super easy to propagate. This doesn't usually take more than like a few weeks to a couple of months to fully root in, and then it will start growing. I would suggest, if you're going to be doing this specifically for this plant, and I know, because we all do it because it's quiet time of the year and there's not an awful lot of things that are happening in the kind of autumn and winter, is where a lot of us would propagate. This is one that I would suggest do it in the summer to give it the best chance of success, or maybe spring or summer, basically, just because it will have the most ideal conditions. Because as I said, this did slow down to almost doing nothing in the winter, and you kind of want it to have a bit more pep and a bit more go if you're going to be taking cuttings and propagating it. Just my 2 cents of advice there. Some other plants you can still propagate quite happily in the winter, but this is one that I would say maybe just leave it until the spring and summer. You'll probably get better and faster results. Now, availability with this one. This is not a plant that I was, as I said, massively aware of. So I don't think this has ever been one that's been very, very, very difficult to find, in the sense that it's not what people might class as stereotypically rare. Nobody likes using those words, rare, but it's difficult to find, and there's a lot of popularity around them. So there's a lot of people that do like these plants when they come out. They're not massively expensive. I think this was very, very low double digits when I got it, as in like probably 15 or 20 Great British pounds, if that. If I can find the price, I'll add it at the top there, including what it would be like in USD. But yeah, this is one that I think the rarity for it is the fact that it's not like a golden pothos that you're going to find it all of the time, and this will come out, at least in UK and Europe, in droves. So it depends on how they come out from the growers, usually in the Netherlands. And that's the thing that you might need to kind of be with this one. If you're waiting to find this and you see it come up, grab it, because you might not then find it for another 6 months to a year, because that might be the cycle that the growers are kind of pushing it out. So top tip there, if you find it and you've been wanting it, grab it. Maybe don't wait for too long in case they sell out and then you have to wait for a few months again to be able to find it again. It's more that than anything else. I think it's more of the growers' growth and kind of propagation patterns that we're kind of slaves to when it comes to this plant. Because other than that, like, I don't see an awful lot of people going gaga about this plant. And in my opinion, it's a shame. They probably should, because there's other variegated plants out there that don't have consistent variegations or this level of variegation, or grow anywhere near as consistently and fast as this one does. I'm sorry. So yeah, this is one that availability-wise doesn't come up super often, but it does come up cyclically, at least here. I'd be very interested in your part of the world. So, and I do know that there's a lot of people that watch me all over the world. I know there's a large chunk of you that are based in the States, or even in Canada. Like, what do you, in your part of the world, doesn't have to be the US or Canada, do you find this often? Have you ever seen this where you are? Do you see it come up often enough, or very rarely if it does, and maybe it's a bit more expensive than what I got it here? I'd be really curious to know. Okay, and let's move into pests with this one. So interestingly, let's talk about the pests that I've never seen on this. I have never seen spider mites on this. Bonus. I have never seen whitefly in my space, and that says something, because at this time of the year, whitefly goes crazy in my space, and especially for leaves that can be this light. Not a single whitefly. Not a single one. Thrips, never. Never seen a thrip on this one. I'm kind of trying to see now if I've ever seen a thrip on this one. No. The one thing that I have seen, and the thing that you're seeing me kind of like brush off, but very, very marginally, like 1 or 2, maybe every 3 or 4 months, is mealybugs. I've seen 1 or 2 mealybugs on this every 1 to 2 months. Anybody that knows me and knows my channel and has been watching for long enough knows that mealybugs are a problem generally in here. They have been for years. And generally, if I'll get mealybugs on something, within a few months, it's a much bigger problem that I then need to address. This, I've found 1 or 2 mealybugs on it for most of the time that I've had it, and other than me just kind of going in like I'm doing now and just squishing it or pulling it off, it has never got much worse. So actually, not massively pest prone, at least not, it hasn't been in my experience. So for me, that's a bonus. Okay, and let's come into some accessories and care for this one. So I'll kind of reiterate what I was talking about before. So this is a great candidate for a hanging pot. This one did come with a hanging pot, so I just kind of left it into what it was. I think I did remove it, if I'm not mistaken, and add it into, so it was in a much, much smaller pot. Maybe it wasn't actually. No, it wasn't. It didn't come in this. It just came with a regular pot, I think. Or maybe it was a smaller hanging pot and I wanted to give it a bigger one. So I have added this. I've taken it out as it was. The roots are very, very fine. Think almost to the level of kind of ferns, maybe not quite that thin, but maybe to the level of something between a fern and a Hoya. Does that paint a bit of a picture? It's not quite as succulent as a Hoya, but not quite so hair-like like you might get with a fern or even a begonia. It's kind of somewhere in between the two, but still very delicate. So I didn't want to jostle the roots too much. So I went for one small size up from what it came in order to be able to put it into this. And then what I did around that, I put Soil Ninja's Anthurium soil mix. Super, super chunky, super, super chunky. Loves life. Absolutely zero problem. I'll be curious to see if you're growing your Pellionia repens, whether or not you've got the green version or the variegated version in a different type of soil mix, and maybe you're surprised by me saying, oh, it's doing exceptionally well in something as light and airy as an Anthurium soil mix, and you've always grown it in something a bit denser more successfully. Do let us all know down below. All of our experiences are valid, and if they work, they work. Like, why question it, basically? It might just be better in your conditions and the care that you're giving it, and this might be better in my conditions with the care that I'm giving it. The one thing I will say, I've only ever grown this in here, so it's never been in super, super high humidity. But again, I'll harken back to what I saw from Emma from Good Growing's story, and I think I saw it just regularly kind of like hanging somewhere in her house, if I'm not mistaken. So I would imagine this isn't one that's particularly fussy about being in regular household conditions. Granted, do I think that if you're living in the desert and you've got very, very, very dry air in the house that this would appreciate it? Probably not. But if it's just regular household humidity, absolutely fine. Also, keep in mind, for the people that know, I actually let my conservatory get relatively on the cold side at night in the winter. I will quite frequently let it go down to like 15, 14 degrees Celsius, mainly because all I've got in here in the winter overnight is an electric heater, and that costs a fortune. So I want to keep the cost down on that, let alone the environmental impact. But I've also seen, after years of testing it in here, my plants do okay. They survive. They might not be thriving, but they survive through the colder months, and then they kind of explode in growth when the heat starts coming in, because in the summer months now, and today's a cool day, it's already nearly 30 degrees Celsius in here, and it's been a cloudy and overcast day. That should tell you something. I've got windows open, I've got all the fans going, that should tell you something. So this, the point I'm trying to make is that this, even when I let it drop down to those low temperatures, do I suggest that you let it drop down if you don't need to? No. But if you let it drop down to a bit cooler temperatures, even in the winter, it won't necessarily throw a hissy fit. Also, this grows like on the shelf behind me, but underneath a lot of plants. It doesn't get primo light. This gets about medium to bright indirect towards medium light, and it seems to do okay. And I'd say it leans more on the medium side than anything else. It's got a grow light relatively close to it, but is it right on top of it? No. This isn't one that needs an awful lot of light, at least in my experience. It's keeping, like, granted, if I had it in slightly lighter conditions, maybe the variegated parts wouldn't fade quite as much. Maybe they'd stay a bit creamier, possibly, but I'm not bothered. In the great words of Catherine Tate, I ain't bothered. But yeah, no, it's it seems to be doing okay with very little kind of additional care. In terms of fertilizing with this, before anybody asks, this gets fertilized the same way that all of my other plants do, by and large. So this has got a weak fertilizer solution in its water every single time I water it. Maybe in the winter it might only get it like once a month or once every 2 weeks, but that's also because the frequency decreases considerably in the winter for this. I think I'll correct myself at the top there because I've got it on my plant care app and I can't remember it now off the top of my head. I think this is, now in the summer I'm watering this every 5 to 7 days. In the winter this probably only got watered every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, and it was fine. It's doing absolutely fine. So I say this, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face, remember to adjust your watering frequency when the seasons change. Plants in the autumn and winter do not need anywhere near as much water as you were giving them in the summer. That is the fastest way to have that dreaded point of the year in autumn when you start getting most of your plants getting root rot because you've not adjusted the watering down. I almost got away with it last year, but I didn't adjust fast enough. I'm just like, ooh, let's just eke it out for a bit longer. Let's just keep it running for a bit longer. No, I think I need to be a lot more kind of bam, your watering is going to get reduced now, and I think I'm probably going to do that from the first or second week of September. I'm actually away the first and second week of September, so depending if it's not scorchingly hot, just to make the person who's going to be taking care of my plants' life a bit easier, I might just adjust all of the watering down on these plants to their winter watering and see, or at least get it as close as I can possibly get it. Some of these plants that are now getting watered every 5 to 7 days in here in the winter only get watered every 30 days. So it might not be that of an extreme jump, but we'll see basically. But yeah, by and large, not a plant that's particularly difficult in its care needs at all. So coming into some final thoughts for this one. Okay, I'll start like I usually do. So knowing what I know now, if I didn't own this plant, would I purchase this plant? 100%, 100%. And I'm so glad that I kind of randomly decided to purchase this, because this plant has brought me no end of joy and super easy to grow. And it always, I don't know if you've got this in your collection or in your house, depending on how many house plants you're growing. Do you have that 1 or 2 plants that when you walk into a room, you look at it and it makes you smile? Like months later, years later, and it's just like, oh, look at you, you're just looking beautiful. And I don't have to worry about you too much. This is one of those plants for me. That should tell you something. And I know, very unassuming, but for me, it just ticks a lot of the boxes. Now, in terms of score, so 0 being the worst, 0, 1 being the worst, and 10 being the best, where would I score this? You might be guessing my score on this one based on how kind of excited and enamored I am with this plant throughout most of this video. Solid 8 or a 9 on this. Solid 8 or a 9 on this. It's not quite getting a 10 because it's not that showstoppery. It doesn't tick up every single one of the boxes, but pretty much most of the boxes are ticked with this one. It's got beautiful variegation, it's got interest, it's got different coloring, it's easy to care for, it doesn't need a moss pole, it doesn't need fussing, it doesn't have a lot of issues with pests for me, so tick, 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 8 or a 9 is this is a solid plant. So if you're thinking about getting this and you like these types of plants, at least from my experience, highly recommended. Highly, highly recommended. So yeah, very, very, very cool plant. So tell me, do you own this? Do you own the standard green Pellionia repens? Have you ever heard of this plant, either the green form or the variegated form? Let us all know down in the comments below. And also, if you own this or the green version, let us know down below if your kind of experiences are different from mine. As I said, we're all very valid in the way that we grow our plants. It might just be adjusted more to our conditions and our care of them. But yeah, super, super cool plant. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.